The woman selling groundnuts at the gate of Amara Bright Primary School in Kumasi had been there so long that the security guard, Emmanuel Incoom, had stopped seeing her. He saw the blue tarpaulin. He saw the metal basin with the plastic scoop. He saw the small charcoal stove that glowed red in the cold harmattan mornings and orange in the rainy season afternoons. But the woman herself, Constance Owusu-Boating, 51 years old, 4'11", with a lower back that had stopped complaining somewhere around the 8th year and gone completely quiet after the 9th, Emmanuel Incoom no longer saw. He saw a fixture of the gate the same way he saw the concrete pillar beside it, and the cracked gutter that ran beneath it, and the painted words above it that said Amara Bright Primary and "Excellence is non-negotiable." That was fine by Constance. She had not come to be seen. She had come every morning, 6 days a week for 12 years, for one reason that could be said in a sentence. Her son Kool-Aid was going to finish what she could not start. She had her plastic stool and her basin and her scoop that measured out exactly 40 Ghana cedis of groundnuts into each folded newspaper cone, and she had 12 years of early mornings and late afternoons and the knowledge, lodged somewhere in her chest like a smooth stone, that Kool-Aid was inside that compound learning the things she had not learned, sitting in the chairs she had never sat in, holding pens in the hand that had held the same plastic scoop since he was 9 years old and small, enough to crouch behind the tarpaulin when it rained. She had started the stall when Kool-Aid was 7. Her husband, Kwadwo Owusu-Boating, had been alive then. He had been alive for precisely 2 more years, dying on a Tuesday in March at the age of 39 from a heart they had not known was broken. And after that it was the stall and Constance and whatever she could save. The stall earned her between 18 and 26 cedis on a good day. Kool-Aid's fees at Amara Bright were 480 cedis per term. Later, when he passed in the JHS section, they were 7 and 20. When she enrolled him at Kumasi Polytechnic Institute on a Saturday morning in September 11, years after Kwadwo died, standing at the admissions counter in the blue dress she had ironed twice the night before, the fees were 200 cedis per semester, and Constance had them in a yellow envelope she had been filling for 14 months. She had sold approximately 440 newspaper cones of groundnuts by that morning. She had eaten at the stall most days. She had eaten standing up most years. She had a thermos she refilled with Sobolo at a woman's kiosk 3 streets away, and she drank it slowly, 1 small cup at a time, over the course of the morning. And this was breakfast, and this was lunch. On the evenings when Kool-Aid came back from school with the particular quiet that meant something had gone wrong, the maths teacher had singled him out. A classmate had said something about the groundnut woman. Constance made groundnut soup. She made it properly, the way her mother had made it, with fresh tomatoes and a full piece of tilapia and the pepper ground by hand, and she did not bring any of it to the stall with her the next morning, because the stall was for selling and the house was for living, and these 2 things had to stay separate, or both of them would disappear. She carried one object every day, from the first day to the last. It was a small brown leather coin purse, no bigger than a man's fist, with a brass clasp that her own mother had sewn in 1994 at a market stall in Asante Mampong. The leather was soft from use, soft the way old things are soft when they have been held continuously and with purpose. Inside the purse she kept the folded receipt from the first term she had paid in full. Term 1, 2011, Amara Bright Primary School, student, Owusu-Boating, Kool-Aid Kwadwo, amount paid. And she did not spend that receipt. She kept it folded, and she kept it at the bottom of the purse under whatever coins were there. And when the purse was empty of coins, the receipt was still there. She had been asked about the purse twice in 12 years. Both times she said it belonged to her mother. Both times that was the end of the conversation, which was how she preferred it. The gate of Amara Bright sat on Ntonso Road in the Abwabo neighborhood of Kumasi. The street was loud in the mornings, trotro horns, market vendors, the grinding of the yellow Yutong bus that stopped 40 meters east of the school gate at 7:22 a.m. and again at 2:45 p.m. The children came through in streams, and Constance knew most of them by their orders. 2 cones, 1 cone, 1 cone with extra, split a cone with the cousin in primary 2. She had given credit to 9 children over 12 years. 8 had eventually paid. 1 never did, and the one who never paid was a girl whose family had moved away, and Constance had never mentioned it again. She did not know the man who stood watching her from across the road for 3 consecutive Tuesdays in January. she noticed him on the second Tuesday. He was tall, somewhere in his late 50s, with a charcoal gray caftan and the unhurried posture of a person who has not needed to rush for a very long time. He stood where the Akara seller usually stood, but the Akara seller did not come on Tuesdays. The man stood where she would have been and watched the school gate with the specific attention of someone not looking at the school gate, someone using the school gate as the background for looking at something else. On the third Tuesday, he crossed the road. He bought 1 cone of Groundnuts. He paid with a 50 CD note and said to keep it, which nobody said. He stood eating from the cone in small deliberate movements and looked at the stall as though he was reading it. The tarpaulin faded from royal blue to the blue of morning sky, the stool with its 1 repaired leg, the folded cones arranged in 3 rows like a small private library. He said, without looking at Constance directly, "How long have you been here?" She said 12 years. He said, "And your children go to school here?" She did not correct the plural. She said her son had already finished and was now at the Polytechnic. He ate another groundnut and was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Which program?" She said, "Accounting and Business Management." He said nothing. He folded the top of the cone closed, put it in his left hand, and looked at her for the first time with the directness of a man who has made up his mind about something he has been considering for 3 weeks. He said his name was Alhassan Danjuma. He said he had an administrative question for her if she didn't mind. She minded, and she did not show it. She said, "Go ahead." He asked if she had ever kept books for the stall. She said yes, from the beginning. He asked what kind of books. She reached under the tarpaulin and brought out a composition notebook, the red kind sold at any shop for 2 CDs, and she set it on the basin without opening it. The cover was worn through to the cardboard at the corners. He reached for it. She let him take it. He opened it. Inside, in columns she had ruled with a ballpoint pen pressed against a steel ruler, were 12 years of daily accounts. Date, items bought, cost per unit, items sold, revenue, running total, and a column on the right labeled school savings, which had its own running total that went from 0 to the number that had filled the yellow envelope on that September Saturday at the Polytechnic admissions counter. He stood reading the notebook for longer than Constance had expected. The school bell rang. The children began to file out. He handed the notebook back. He said he would come again on Friday if she didn't mind. She said fine. He crossed back to the other side of Antonso Road and walked south without turning around, and Constance watched him go and then looked at the 50 CD note still sitting beside the coin purse and thought of something she could not name. Yet, if this story is landing somewhere in you, if you are already seeing what Constance has been building without anyone watching, stay with it. What comes next is the part that nobody at that school gate could have predicted. She had 3 customers after he left, and then the afternoon slowed, and she sat on her stool and drank the last of the sabalo from the thermos and thought about the notebook. She had never shown it to anyone. She had not shown it to Colade. She had not shown it to the woman from the Sobolo kiosk, who was the closest thing she had to a daily friend in the world. The notebook existed for one purpose, which was to know exactly where she stood at all times, and she had been the only person who needed to know that. Alhassan Danjuma came on Friday. He came again the following Tuesday. On the 4th visit he came with a woman, perhaps 35, in a white linen dress and sensible heels, who carried a tablet computer, and asked Constance if she would be willing to answer some questions. Constance looked at her. She looked at Alhassan. She said it depends on the questions. The woman's name was Gifty. She worked, as she explained it with the precision of someone who explained it often, as the operations director of the Danjuma Foundation for Workforce Development, which had 3 offices, in Accra, in Lagos, and in London, and which had for the past 17 years run financial literacy and small business training programs across West Africa. Alhassan Danjuma, Gifty said, was its founder and executive chairman. Constance looked at him. He was eating groundnuts again from the same paper cone posture as before. Gifty said they were in the process of building a new curriculum, not classroom theory, but a practical financial management program designed specifically for market traders, informal sector workers, and women who ran household enterprises on micro-budgets. She said they had been looking for people who had done this in practice, in the actual conditions of the street, with actual irregular income, for a meaningful period of time, to review the curriculum for accuracy and realism. She said Alhassan had been visiting informal vendors along 3 major streets in Kumasi for 6 Weeks, she said his observation of Constance's bookkeeping, visible through the notebook he had seen, was the reason they were here on Friday. Constance said she didn't have any training in accounting. Gifty said she knew. She said that was the entire point. The offer, as Gifty explained it over the next 11 minutes, with the tablet screen turned toward Constance, showing figures and timelines and program descriptions, was this. The foundation wanted to engage Constance as a curriculum consultant on a part-time basis for an initial period of 6 months. The compensation was 850 setas per month. The work was 2 hours on 3 mornings per week at the Foundation's Kumasi office, which was on Prempeh 2 Street, 14 minutes from the school gate by Trotro. She could continue the stall. She could arrange her own hours. She would review draft training materials, annotate them for practical accuracy, and meet with the curriculum development team to describe how she had actually managed money, saved systematically, and tracked expenses over 12 years without formal accounting training. Constance did not answer immediately. She picked up the coin purse. She turned it over twice in her left hand, the way she always turned it over, and she felt the shape of the receipt inside through the soft leather, the single folded paper that had been at the bottom for 12 years. The receipt that said 480 cedis and Term 1 and Collade Quadwo. She set the purse down. She said she had one question. She asked whether the curriculum would actually be used, whether the people who needed it would get it. Gifty paused. Al-Hassan stopped eating. He said yes, that was the whole point, and he said it with the plainness of a person who does not make promises they intend to qualify. She said fine. The first session was on a Monday morning, 9 weeks later at a round table in the Dan Juma Foundation's Kumasi office on Prempeh 2 Street. There were 4 people at the table. Constance, Gifty, a young curriculum developer named Tobena, who had a laptop and a notebook of his own, and a woman from the Lagos office visiting by video call on a laptop propped against a water jug. Tobena had prepared a 30-page draft of Unit 2, which covered saving strategies for traders with seasonal income variation. He slid a copy to Constance. She read it in 21 minutes without making notes. Then she set it down and said quietly that it was entirely accurate in theory and would not be used by a single market woman she had ever met. The Lagos screen went silent. Gifty looked at Tobena. Tobena looked at Constance. She said the problem was the language. She said the document assumed the reader trusted institutions, banks, savings groups, cooperatives, because the people who wrote it had reason to trust institutions. She said the women she knew did not have that reason, and so any document that began with a recommendation to open a savings account at a licensed bank was a document that would be set down after the first paragraph. She said she had never opened a savings account in 12 years of dedicated saving. She said she knew 8 women on Intanso Road alone with the same practice. She put her hand flat on the draft and said, "So where is the chapter for how we actually do it?" By the end of the second session, the curriculum team had redesigned the opening unit. By the end of the third session, Tobena had asked Constance to narrate a sample module in her own language, Twi, for the pilot audio version. By the end of the 6th month, Al-Hassan Danjuma had asked her to stay. The full offer, as Gifty presented it in writing, with the tablet and the document this time and no groundnuts, was a salaried position as senior field consultant for the curriculum development division, starting at 3,400 cedis per month, with training provided, with a transport allowance, with a schedule that could be organized around the stall for as long as Constance wanted to keep the stall. The appointment letter was dated March 3rd. Constance read it standing at the Foundation's front desk, and the receptionist noticed that she held it with both hands, very still for a long time before she looked up. She kept the stall for 4 more months. She came every morning at the same time, set up the tarpaulin, filled the basin, arranged the cones in their 3 rows. The stall earned her between 18 and 23 setas on those mornings. She gave most of it to the Cebola woman to keep in a small emergency fund they had agreed on between themselves, informally in the way that worked. She told Emmanuel Incoom, the security guard who had stopped seeing her, that she was leaving at the end of term. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time, which was accurate. He said he had not known she had a son at the school. She said he'd been gone for over 2 years. Emmanuel said he was sorry he hadn't asked. She said it was fine. On the last morning, she packed the stall for the final time. She folded the blue tarpaulin. She stacked the newspaper cones she had not sold. She picked up the metal basin and the plastic scoop. She lifted the charcoal stove, which was cold and clean. She loaded everything into the handcart she had borrowed from the woman at the kiosk. Before she left, she reached into the coin purse and took out the receipt. She unfolded it once. She read it, Term 1, 2011, Amara Bright Primary School, 480 GHC, Owusu Boteng Collade Quadwo. She folded it again. She put it back in the purse. She closed the brass clasp. She wheeled the cart south on Intanso Road toward the kiosk, and the school gate stayed where it had always been, and the painted sign above it said excellence is non-negotiable, and the morning was already warm. Constance carried her son through school in 97, 7 paper cones of groundnuts and 12 years of mornings, and the world walked past her every one of those mornings without asking a single question. That is not a special story. That is the story of most women who have ever worked without recognition. The women who kept their books in, read composition notebooks that nobody asked to see, who ate standing up, who poured sabalo one small cup at a time so that the thermos would last until afternoon, who folded their receipts and kept them at the bottom of their purses not as trophies, but as proof to themselves that the thing they were doing was real. The man who bought groundnuts for 3 consecutive Tuesdays before he crossed the road, he was not looking for Constance specifically. He was looking for accuracy. He was looking for the thing that textbooks about financial literacy could not contain, which was the actual intelligence of a person who had solved a problem with nothing but attention and consistency over a very long time. He found her the way such things are always found, not by looking for something remarkable, but by being quiet enough to see what was already there. You cannot teach what Constance knew by writing it in a document. You can only find someone who already knows it and give them a room and a table, and the question, where does this miss? This is not a lesson about education or credentials or the failure of institutions. It is a lesson about what a person builds when they have no choice but to build slowly, carefully in units of 0. 40 setas and 1 folded cone at a time, over 12 years that no one was watching. She is still working. Collade graduated from the Polytechnic Institute in June with a distinction in accounting and business management. He works now at a firm on Liberation Road in Accra, and on Saturdays when he is home he makes groundnut soup, fresh tomatoes, a full piece of tilapia, the pepper ground by hand, and Constance sits at the table and drinks sabolo from a glass and does not stand. The coin purse is on the table beside her glass. The brass clasp is still good. Here is the question I want you to sit with. If you had done what Constance did, 12 years of mornings, every record kept, every seti counted, all of it invisible to the world, and someone finally crossed the road and asked to see your notebook, what would be in it? Not what you wish had been in it. What would actually be there? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about quiet work, hidden record keeping, and the people the world does not look at until the day it cannot look away. I'll see you in the next one.